Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Weekly Rundown, a typically Patreon-only show, but when it comes to special events like the North Face, like UTMB, we like to put on a little special show with a special guest.
Returning special guest
because she kicked so much butt at the last show. But first and foremost, my partner, as always, Mario Fraley over here. And this, of course, is the lovely Corinne Malcolm, who will not be racing. Were you ever in the race?
No, I was supposed to be in Japan this week, but
that's
my
what
race
it was.
got
Okay.
canceled.
What happened there?
They had a typhoon in early October and just did a ton of road damage. And so when I found out, I thought about doing the North Face 50, and then I just decided to end my season instead.
There you go. So she'll be enjoying whatever like the Marin Headlands has to offer by way of coffee, food. I know I'm going to have a great couple of days here. But the task at hand, I would say we have a decent field. It's not an incredible field for a championship race, but I think especially on the women's side, it's just a testament to, we've had a recent spell of dropouts or people who are never really intending on running the race to begin with. And it's still a deep field, I think, especially in the top, 6, 7, 8. And, I would say in particular, the top 3, there's a potential for like a Western States type showdown where you have really high level women battling out at the top. But figured, should we start with the men's side? Because I am a little more excited about the women's side.
Well, I think we've got stout fields on both sides. There's no, call them like big shiny names that are headlining the fields that people even outside of running may recognize, like the Jim Walmsleys of the world, that type of thing. But there's 2 solid fields for the North Face 50-mile championships this year. It's going to be a great day from a weather standpoint, and I think it's going to be a real close race on both sides.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I think that both races are going to be really good. I'd say we kind of have like instead of like maybe the leading men as we would normally have them, like superstar status, we've got kind of like their co-stars with people like Jared Hazen and Matt Daniels who are set up for really good races. But this is kind of like their opportunity to really throw down while we're missing some of the maybe like even bigger names.
Yeah, I'm not saying at all that it doesn't have the potential to be an exciting race. I just think like we're missing the Jim Walmsleys, the Zach Millers, the Hayden Hawks of the world. And, we have, I know this is going to sound not great, but, we have like the next level of guys, and it's a very packed second tier.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I still just have a hard time like really going that route because like Jared Hazen was second at Western States and ran what would have been the fastest time in history if Jim Walmsley hadn't blown it out of the water.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily talking about caliber. I'm talking about like the shiny names, the recognizable
right. That's what I meant. That's what I meant at the top when I said not the big shiny names that people outside of like our little nerdy circle might recognize.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. We have the headliners. I would say Jared Hazen is definitely up there, especially if he's healthy. I don't know his latest status. I know he's dealt with some injuries, but Jared has to be up there. Matt Daniels is another name that has to be up there. Who else would you put in that upper echelon of the men?
I mean, I can go on this. I think that you're right. I think it's Jared and Matt's day to have a real throwdown. And as we mentioned before we started talking, this is a really good course for both of them. It's really fast. It's really runnable. It's got really long climbs. And then we've got some really talented men who are maybe untested at this distance or are kind of up and coming. We've got some international talent whose names we'll butcher for sure. From France, we've got Sebastian, who was second at Lake Sonoma 50 this year. So he's kind of a known name. He was second to Jared, but put on a really good race, particularly I think over the back half of the race. And then as well, we have another Frenchman named, I don't even know how you say his name, Thibaut.
We'll call him Thibaut. Yeah.
We can call him Thibaut. like our friend Dylan, we'll call him
Debo.
Debo and Thibaut, who won Transvolcania this year and was second at CCC. So obviously very talented, but someone who we don't recognize maybe in the US.
Yeah.
Along with kind of a new name to the 50-mile distance, and we'll kind of see what happens, is Robby Simpson out of the UK, who has done really well at the trail marathon distance and up to like a 50K distance. And he was actually supposed to run Les Tempiers. in France.
Le Templier.
And that was also canceled.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be kind of his debut at the next distance, and he decided to come over here instead. And so I'm really curious to see what he'll do over this distance, just because he's fast, but this is a, uncharted territory.
Yeah, I think those are the top ones. I'll throw two more names in there. We just mentioned him a second ago. Dylan Bowman is
Debo.
returning to the Marin Headlands. He lives
The
in
mayor.
Portland now. The mayor, the almost former mayor of Mill Valley, California, but I know
past and former,
past and former,
past and future.
But I ran with him yesterday. He's very excited to be here. He's had kind of a rough go of it from a health standpoint over the last several months, but he's healthy now. He's had a good little training block. He's excited to race. He's not over raced. He knows these trails as well or better than anyone in the men's field. He's had some success at this race, and I'm really excited to see what he can do. So he's a big one, and a lesser known name who is not really tested at this distance but has a ton of talent is Tyler Wolf. Tyler Wolf is fast.
He's
and this
been
is
practicing ultra running, I feel like, pretty aggressively for the last year is the best way I can describe
I
what's
think
been
that's
happening.
an apt description. And he's untested at this distance, certainly against this caliber of field, but he has talent and he can run. And this is a runner's course, and it's going to be a fast day, I think, from a condition standpoint. So I'm interested to see how he mixes it up with everyone.
Yeah, he brings in a lot of speed for sure. He ran Canyons 100K, I believe, this year. So he has run this distance or a little bit further, but I don't think he's done it super successfully yet. I've seen him definitely throw some fireworks. I was at Formidable 50K this past February where he was aggressive and led early and then became hypothermic because it was a really cold, wet, rainy day, and it was more or less one of his first attempts at the ultra distance. But he walked it in, which I thought was, major kudos for like getting on warm clothes and walking it in. I think there's a lot, there's probably some other guys who fall into that category as well, who are just kind of like, who are a little bit untested. Like Drew Holman is an example, like young guy, has definitely run the 50-mile distance, but in this caliber of a field, like how will he do? Like, will he rise to the top or like rise into that top 10 group or not? And I think mentioning, like going back to Dylan a little bit too, I think he races the best when he is excited about racing. And given that he's had a string of bad luck as far as injuries go over the past 10 months or so.
What's been going on with him?
He had a string of kind of odd injuries. He had a race, canceled, and then maybe he broke his ankle and then he had a race canceled.
He had a bike crash at one point, separated his shoulder.
Yeah, that was post Hard Rock being canceled, post ankle fracture. So he had a bad ankle sprain where it essentially was an avulsion fracture, and kind of tried to come back really quickly from that. And I think that kind of caused some like downstream side effects. And he like finally, I think after that bike crash, he's like, you know what? I'm not going to force it. I'm going to like, take my foot off the gas pedal and let myself like recover both mentally and physically from like trying to force it. And that has clearly worked.
And he's had a shift in mindset as well. This is something he and I talked about yesterday, is he is trying to get back to basics, why he got into this sport in the first place, what he loves about it, taking that pressure off of himself as a professional athlete, as someone who's put up big results, and worrying about what people like us are thinking he's going to do, and just like getting back to his roots of why am I here? Why do I do this? He has that excitement. And as you said, when he's excited is when he tends to race his best, and he's got experience here. So I'm excited to see how it shakes out for him.
Across the board, how important do you think it is to have that home field knowledge that Dylan has and a handful of other people have,
that Drew has, that Tyler has? I mean, there's actually a handful of men who have like hometown trail experience here. And I think that can be advantageous. You just know what's coming. You know how long the climbs are. You know where you can, maybe push the, turn the gears a little bit if you're trying to break someone else. I think this race sets up really well for tactics. And I think we have the opportunity on both the men's side and the women's side this year to actually see tactics play out. I don't think we're going to see a time trial. Like I'm hoping that we get an exciting race where people kind of, play off of each other a little bit more.
I still think more so on the men's side than the women's, but it could go on both. It's going to go out pretty fast, and the winner of each race is probably going to come from that front pack, but it's really going to shake up what's going on behind them. And that's where the tactics are going to come in, and the course knowledge is going to come in to your benefit. It's knowing like, hey, this is crazy fast. There's going to be people who blow up. I need to stay patient and make sure that I've got something for the back half of this course, because the early part of it, Granted, you're in the dark and you're in the headlands. You're on fire roads. It's early.
It's so
you're
runnable.
fresh. It's very runnable. Temperatures are going to be nice. Like, people are going to be rolling pretty fast early on. I'm speaking from my own experience 2 years ago where I felt great early on, and for a number of reasons it came back to bite me late in the race. And I was nowhere near the front, but the same thing is going to happen. You're going to have people who feel good. It's going to go out hard. I mean, the winner is certainly going to come from that group. There's just too much talent here for it not to, but it's going to make things interesting from that kind of like 4 through 10 type of spot.
Yeah, and I think if there are some guys who are maybe they play the tactic game of being a little bit, I don't want to say smarter, but like if they know that they can't necessarily hang the entire time with that very front group, and so maybe that means, you're not going for the win in that case, we're going to see some guys that can creep into the top 10 over the last, 10, 15 miles who might not have been there otherwise. People like Eric Sensman, if he runs a smart race, local Ben Koss.
If he trail knowledge here.
Super, tons of trail knowledge, and he's good at a runnable 50 mile. He had a great Lake Sonoma this year. He's definitely got experience in this race and on these trails. And so if those guys are patient, which is really hard to do when the race is really competitive and you can run, we're going to see names like that come up, I think, over the later half of the race.
I agree.
Are there any dark horses that we haven't mentioned yet, or maybe we have talked about that isn't coming to the forefront of mind of most people out there?
Let me take a look at your cheat sheet over here. And
I mean, we haven't mentioned Ryan Kaiser. He could have a good day. Yeah. He's definitely experienced. He was fourth at Canyons this year. He's won I Am Tough 100 mile, which is obviously very different than this, but could have good days. Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting, I think. I mean, you don't know.
Scroll back the other way.
I was talking to someone earlier about kind of what they were thinking was going to happen in the race, and one other name that we haven't mentioned would be Drew Maycomer, who maybe hasn't had a great 2019, but has won Rio del Lago, has been as high as 5th at Lake Sonoma. He didn't have a good Lake Sonoma this year, but he's if he's fit and and he puts together a good race, that could be a name that we see creep up as well.
I found the name that I wasn't thinking of. Anthony Costales is very fast, super talented, won way too cool this year. I mean, again, I really think this type of course benefits the runners in the race more so than the mountain athletes. And he can turn it over. He can run. He's not super tested past 50K-ish. So he's going to be entering some uncharted territories. But he's another one of those guys who he's raced in this area before. He's somewhat familiar with these trails. He can move, and I mean, he's here to compete. So he could be one of those guys who throws himself in it and surprises a lot of us at the end of the day, or it could completely go the other way. But I think he'll be a factor in the race.
I think for the men's 4th through 10th positions, it's going to be the story of the weekend is going to be the up and comers, the guys who I think there are a lot more men, or at least a lot in the men's race as opposed to the women's race. There's a lot of up and comers, a lot of guys who might be untested at the 50 mile distance, but who are incredibly fast. And so I think that is what's going to kind of be the story of, the remaining spots in the top 10.
This is like the quintessential American race, right? Where there is a decent bit of climbing, but it is all very fire road, packed out. Even the single tracks are fairly groomed and well taken care of.
Yeah, it's fast. Yeah, it's definitely a fast. I mean, every step of this course is runnable.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at a low 6-hour race on the men's side.
What was Tim's time? Do you guys remember?
He was 6:02-ish.
Yeah.
But that's the only other.
This course has only been raced on once, and that was 2017 because last year was canceled due to the fire. So we've got the San Francisco finish, slightly different start. A good chunk of the middle part of the course is very similar to what the classic TNF was, but the finish is definitely different. The start's a bit different. So, we are comparing two different courses to past years. But I think Zach went, 5:56 or something last time he won here, Zach Miller. So I mean, I think with the talent at the front of this field, with the course in as good of shape as it is, with the weather not being too hot, I think it's going to be like low 6. It could be a sub 6 day depending how quick they're rolling, but I'd say like 6 hours plus or minus 5 minutes is going to be the winning time.
I wouldn't want to be a tourist on the Golden Gate Bridge
I was
when
just
the
gonna ask
men's
you about
field
that.
comes rolling.
So there was a
through.
whole big to-do about the finish now with the running across the Golden Gate Bridge. What are your takes as locals? Do you think that affects the race positively, negatively to finish at Chrissy Field? I know it wasn't much of an issue in 2017. I don't think. There may have been a story or two about a bumped shoulder, but beyond that, I haven't heard too much negative backlash from the amount of backlash there was when it was first announced by the locals.
Yeah, I mean, having raced it myself, I think it's a cool finish. I mean, you're finishing in San Francisco. It's, an amazing city. Chrissy Field it's a good finish line venue. There's stuff going on there. There's people wondering, like, going by, like, what's going on? Like, there's a lot of tense and excitement, and I think that's good for the sport, that it's exposed like that. But I mean, I think it is a good finish. You do come over the bridge. I don't know what they'll do this year. They had volunteers out there who were like trying to clear lanes for people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I was somewhere in the top like 40 or 50 finishers 2 years ago, and it was fairly spread out. I didn't have any issues running over the bridge. I think the volunteers did a decent enough job. I mean, if you've got a 2-person race at the front, that could certainly make things interesting, but overall it wasn't a problem, and it's pretty cool to be kind of at the top of SCA Trail and you're about to like drop down to the parking lot and then go under the bridge and across, like, oh, I'm finishing over there and I've got a few miles to go, and I don't know, I think it's a great course, and I think it's one of the better finishes that I've seen in an ultra race.
Yeah, I think it's really iconic, and it's a really cool way to finish a 50-mile race. It's not, I would say running over the bridge isn't inherently enjoyable. It's like,
no, it's not at all.
It's loud. There's on the weekends, bikes get one side of the bridge and pedestrian traffic gets the other side of the bridge, and they have opted to not close down one side of the bridge for like one side of the walkways for the race, which is fine. But I do think that because it's a totally open space with limited control, that it's a little bit confusing, particularly if you're not 100% sure of where you're going. Like when I ran it 2 years ago, I didn't live here. I like flew in for the race, and I had never gone over the bridge before, which was, so it was a cool experience, but also finding your way under the bridge and then onto the bridge and then like off the bridge into Chrissy Field was kind of confusing. So I think at the very front end of the race, that could be a little bit interesting. I definitely was like trying not to bump into people taking selfies on the bridge. But it's a cool way to finish. I think that it's also like creates a better atmosphere at the finish line. I know at the old finishing location, there's like no cell service back there. Like getting a bus out of there was really tricky.
Yeah.
So I think this promotes a better like festival atmosphere, and kind of it's more user friendly in that case.
Yeah, and it exposes the event to people who have no association with it. And again, I think that's a good thing for the sport. And the logistics are a lot easier as well. When you're in Rodeo Valley, as you said, there's no cell phone service there. Parking is a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah,
It's
bottlenecks.
Bottlenecks. There's that tunnel you have to go under, and they only let traffic go one way, so you've got to like stop there for a while. So I think, overall, it's definitely a positive change. It certainly has its challenges, but I mean, you could say that
It is a lot of
anything.
stimuli after like, quiet time on the trails, and all of a sudden it's just tourists upon tourists. So, all right, the women's field.
The women's field's awesome.
It's awesome. I think I was telling these guys, maybe I mentioned that the start of the show, that it's just a testament that having some really massive names drop out and you still have the field that we see in front of us is just a testament to how amazing this field is. I think I'm personally excited to see two people go at it again. That's EO and Anna Mae Flynn. A little repeat of Lake Sonoma.
We've got 2 repeat battles to happen.
That's right, yes. And Western States with Brittany and Claire Gallagher. So those top 4, and the rest of the field beyond that are no slouches either. So why don't we just start with our favorites?
I'm going to serve it up to Corinne.
So I would agree with that. Those are 4 really interesting names to watch, and it'll kind of be curious to see what happens. We haven't seen them race recently. Anna May, this is kind of a last minute decision for her, or a later decision for her to do the race or not. She was kind of prepping for an off season and decided to make the call to come out and race. And she had a great Lake Sonoma, obviously, duking it out with EO all the way to the finish line, and a great speed goat, but hasn't raced since then. EO had an amazing Lake Sonoma 50, had some trouble at Western States. We haven't seen her race since then. She's raced some local stuff, but that's about it. She's local. She knows the trails really well. Like maybe that means it's her day. Claire, same sort of story, like amazing Western States, but she's kind of only raced some small stuff since then. And then Brittany went over to CCC, kind of do the Western States CCC double, and didn't have a great day at CCC.
No, not for her standards. No.
For her standards, no. Like she opted to not drop out, which I thought was a great decision on her point, and she kind of slugged it in. So there's some unknown in that a little bit. Like, where is their fitness right now? We haven't seen them race recently. What's going to happen? But they're 4 incredibly strong names. Most of them have experience on this course. Claire's raced this before. EO obviously knows the trails. She could probably run this in her sleep. Anna May has experience at this race. She didn't have I think she dropped out 2 years ago. Probably around the 50K mark, I want to say. But, she's gritty. And this race is going to take some grit probably if the 4 of them are really hammering all together like that.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that they will. And I think, to your point, what adds to the intrigue of this race is none of them have really raced all that recently. So we have no idea I have some idea where one of the athletes
you better
is, given that I coach EO. So I'm going to try and be as unbiased as I can be. But she hasn't raced a lot. I mean, she had a tough go of it at Western State. She felt off the entire day. She went to Transvolcania. Didn't have a great day there at all. She did race locally. She ran the Skyline to the Sea marathon a few weeks back, and that went really well. So gave her like a bit of confidence and just got her back into that race environment. And she needed that, honestly, coming off the summer that she had. But she's excited to race on her home trails. She has started this race before several years ago. Has never actually had the chance to really race it. So I know she's looking forward to that opportunity. But yeah, I mean, you've got Anna May, who got her with half a mile to go at Lake Sonoma this year. I mean, Claire was second here in 2017. She won Western States.
And she had a strong back half in 2017 as well. Like she was...
I know. She blew right by me going down the Ben Johnson Trail at about 50K in and just totally kamikazed it down the trail. And she, I think this is a course that really suits her strengths as well. Claire was a very good runner collegiately. She is obviously experienced at ultras now. She knows how to race these distances. She's got good momentum. I mean, I think, if I'm being objective, she's definitely the favorite here. And then you've got Brittany, who, I mean, she had an awesome Western States. She has shown
so much range as well. I think there was
incredible range.
Question marks for her going into the season. Like, oh, interesting. Like Western States, she was kind of a notable sky runner, I would say.
Yeah, I almost see her as a Euro runner because she does so many European races.
Like a mountain runner, and
but
then
she can move.
Yeah. Apparently,
she can move.
So to watch her come in to golden ticket into Western States, so she had to run fast, and then to run the Western States she did, she's got wheels. And so I don't know that I can't, pick a 50 mile out in my mind where I'm like, okay, like what have I seen her do? But clearly she's got, she was at the front of the Western States race, like not at the very front, but she pushed Claire with, 10 miles to go, 8 miles to go. So I think that I'm really curious to see what that translates into. And we have a whole slew of women who, they've kind of had some ups and downs this season or have been a little bit quieter due to injury or a change in like school and that kind of stuff. And I'm excited to see those gals kind of step up and be part of that, whatever transpires on Saturday.
It's not exactly apples to apples, but Brittany has won Bandera 100K. Mm-hmm. And 100K at Bandera, and then was second, I believe, at Way Too Cool, the 50K. So, which another runnable, like quintessential
to
American
Claire.
course.
She was second to Claire then,
again.
right? Yeah.
So this is a really exciting
it's
top
be good.
4. There's definitely some history there. Let's talk about the next tier because, first of all, let's mention that Ruth Croft is probably the biggest name to drop from this field. I think she would have been the prohibitive favorite.
I think she would have been the favorite.
Yeah. Stellar year, but she's back in Nepal doing, Ruth things. But the next tier, She's like just like a global. Yeah. I was kind of disappointed to get that email because we were supposed to podcast, and I was like, oh, Ruth, really? But totally understand. So the next tier, again, this is not making it sound like a pejorative whatsoever, but it is just more of a testament to how stacked the field is. We have the next level, the Keeleys, the Abby Levines, who else? The Addie Bracey.
Yeah, so I think the most interesting names in that kind of that next group, like Abby Levine's a dark horse to me. Just, and I'll talk about like her experience in a second. But like the next group in my mind is Keeley, who has run amazing 50-mile times, but had a stress fracture this spring. And, you know, this will be her second race back. She had to drop out of CCC due to like foot blisters, you know, kind of a weird drop. But she could have an amazing day. She just had, you know, she hasn't had a 2019 season. And so, you know, curious to see, you know, is she rusty? What is that going to look like? Mm-hmm. Taylor Nolan, who's had kind of a quiet year because she started nursing school this past spring in Flagstaff. So she's been much more selective with her races because of that. But she's the current FKT holder in the Grand Canyon, rim to rim to rim. She was second to Anna Mae at Speed Goat. She had an okay Lake Sonoma. She was in the top 10 group.
She was second the year before that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she's good at this distance.
Yeah, she's very good at this distance. And then I would include Addie Bracey in that group as well. Who
I would too.
I don't think has had a great 100-mile race yet, despite she finished right in front of me at Western States. So clearly, you know, top 10 Western States, not a bad day. But I think Addie Bracey's strengths right now probably lie more in the 50-mile distance. She had a great Lake Sonoma. And I think that she's scary fast. You know, she's Claire Gallagher scary fast. And I think that, you know, that is given that how runnable this race is, if Addie is on, she will be threatening that top 4 group for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Addie will be right with that front group. I know it was a few years back. It might have been her first 50K. She and Io went at it at Formidable. Addie's as fast or faster than anyone in the field when it comes down to pure speed. She's a great track runner, great cross-country runner.
She's a good road marathoner before switching over.
Yep. So she is just a very good, like, pure runner, but she's been on the trails now for a few years. She's gained experience. I think she's still living in Colorado. She's, you know, I think she's kind of set for that sort of, as you said, 50K, 50-mile type distance. And as we've talked about many a time here, this is a very, you know, runnable course, and she can turn it over. So, I mean, if she's feeling it, I mean, watch out. She's going to be right up at the front, I think, like certainly in that top 4 or 5 group.
It's interesting because there is a bit of a gap. I think that is some of the common narrative between the two fields is that we don't really have, aside from a couple names at CCC or maybe some more obscure races, that we don't have a recent race to really gauge their performances on. We have to kind of look back towards late summer type things. Is there anybody else in this field that you would put in that second group, or should we talk about more of the dark horses?
I mean, I would put Anne-Marie Madden there. I mean, as I just learned, she's no longer living in the area, but she did for a while. So she's run a lot of miles on these trails. She's very familiar with the course. I think 50 miles is a good distance for her. She's got good, just pure kind of
speed.
Leg speed. Yeah. So I would certainly put her kind of in that second group.
Yeah, third at Way Too Cool. Again, a runner's race.
Yeah.
And so
I think
she's got scary PRs on the road. Like, I feel like I saw the year I ran with her at Chuckanut, like she had run some ridiculous like 10K like 2 weeks before that, and I was like, okay, cool, like bye. Like, I will not be seeing you on the tow path into the finish. You will be gone. But then I think kind of that next, and they're not even dark horses, they're established runners. You know, it's kind of hard to call like the Abbeys.
Yeah.
Like
right.
the Boulder Abbeys, right? So we got Abby Hall and Abby Levine. Who, you know, are hard to call dark horses because they're not
relative to the field.
Relative to the field, maybe, you know, but you know, I'm rooting for them. But Abby Levine, you know, talented collegiate runner, talented triathlete. But she's only run one race over 50K, and that was 100K. That was very mountainous, kind of a slow moving 100K. And so I want to see her put that, you know, that big leap from the fast 50K, like Way Too Cool, to a 50 mile like this. And then her training partner and really good friend, Abby Hall, the other Abby, they're both Adidas teammates as well. So they spend a lot of time together. I would say that Abby Hall is much more established at racing the 50 mile distance, and it's a comfort zone for her. Was a collegiate runner, definitely has wheels, and was 8th at CCC. Like, the U.S. women crushed CCC. And she was right in that mix and had a really good day. So I'm excited to see how is that fitness translated over to, you know, hopefully putting together a physically and mentally strong day this weekend.
I'm looking at the field, and there's a couple of women who've run marathons in the 2:30s.
Yeah.
So it's like, but I mean, they're not like household standout names. So there can be, like we keep saying, it's a runner's course. So there could be some surprises there.
Yeah, there's 2 women with really fast marathon PRs. One who we have not been able to find any trail experience for, Heather I think she's out of Montana. Super, super fast.
I think she ran 2:34 not that long ago.
14. Yeah, 2:34. I think
2014, so like 5 years ago. But like 2:40, I think as recently as just like a year or two ago.
Yeah, and being in Montana, like, you run trails there, right? You know, you're in Helena or Missoula or Bozeman, lots of trail access, but I don't know. And generally, if she's racing in Montana, which I'm not sure, I was like trying to get some inside intel from Montana sources before this, but did not. Most of those races aren't going to be on ultra sign up. And so it's possible that she's raced something in Montana that's just not coming up, like onto our radar, you know, something like Don't Fence Me In, which is a 30K in Helena, which is generally pretty fast. Like, it's possible that she's done it, but I don't know the answer to that. And then a Canadian woman who's run under 240 this year, and it sounds like she's raced up to 50K. But what does that mean? Like, how is that going to translate on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, as we've talked about, it's like a course that definitely benefits runners, but it ain't flat. So, I mean, you could have all the speed in the world, but if your legs aren't calloused to the up and down, if you don't know how to change rhythm, if you don't know how to spread yourself out over the course of 6 to 7 hours, have the fueling dialed, doesn't matter how fast you are.
Yeah, the biggest issue with people jumping up to, like, this is not an uncommon first 50 mile. In the pro field or in the general field, it's a fairly common first 50 mile. It's competitive. You want to be where the competition is. And the biggest issue with people making that jump is, one, the longest race they've probably done is 3.5 to 4 hours, maybe, if they've done a 50K, a fast 50K. And then fueling, because you can get away with fueling, or you can get away with not fueling or under fueling in a 50K, which is, you know, not dissimilar from like a road marathon. But you can't do that when you're racing for 6 hours in the men's race or 7 to 8 hours in the women's race. And so my biggest concern with people making that jump is that they might put together a brilliant first 20, maybe even 30 miles. But if they're not getting fuel in, it's a long way back to Chrissy Field.
You're pretty much describing my ultra running career right there. But my issue 2 years ago wasn't fueling. The fueling was actually okay. It was more just my back and some other issues that I dealt with. But all those points that you made are absolutely true and are going to be someone's undoing on Saturday, for better or worse.
Yeah, we see it whenever anyone makes that jump. I've definitely talked to, like, so another notable drop from this weekend would be Ladia Albertson-Junkins, who unfortunately took a little trail tumble and broke her wrist a couple weeks ago and is in a cast. And so I remember when she was going to do chucking at 50K for the first time, and she's like, I have to eat. And we're like, yes, you have to eat. Like, this is how you eat for this. And so we'll see that this weekend for sure. Someone who just is unfamiliar with that.
Is the weather supposed to hold up? Because right now, this is perfectly ideal. Overcast, probably in the 50s.
I think lows are mid 40s, highs are mid 60s. So, yeah, it's going to be a pretty spectacular day, I think.
Let me just quickly mention the 50K because we have our friend Justin Grunwald running the race. And we also have a first-time ultramarathoner in Kara Goucher running the 50K. Do we know anything else about those two fields?
Nope.
Nope. As has been pointed out on the iRun Far previews as well, this is not the 50K preview. So we don't, I think, is Amy Leadham going to race the 50K?
Yeah, Amy Leadham is going to race the 50K.
And if she's healthy, she'll put together like a great race. As long as she's healthy and we have good air quality, because I know she's got some asthma stuff. She'll put together a phenomenal
she struggles
race.
with the air quality when it's on the poor side. She's had a good build-up. She's healthy. We were aiming toward the 50 mile, realized a few weeks ago that it was going to be a stretch 50K was something she's more suited to at this point of her training. So she'll be in the 50K. She's had, rough go of it, if we're being honest, for most of this year from a health standpoint. So she's healthy and excited to be back out there, her home trail. So I know she's looking forward to the opportunity to toe the line with Kara Goucher and see what she can do with
what a cool opportunity.
Several
really cool.
several thousand feet of elevation gain and dirt underneath her feet.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, so Kara ran the Leadville Trail Marathon earlier this year, which is a hard trail marathon, to be fair. It's high. It's, they had some snow on and off the course this year with the high snow year in Colorado. But it sounds like her biggest undoing there was fueling. And I think that's another thing, right? Like, has she figured that out? Like, how will Kara do eating? Because that, I think, is the biggest, once again, like one of the hardest transitions from the road to the trail is like figuring out how you eat when you run. She'll be, blessed being at sea level this time around. That definitely makes digestion a whole lot easier. But I'm curious to see, a little bit, some good rolling vert on this. I know downhills are not always great for Kara's knees, it sounds like, just like years of wear and tear. But otherwise, it'll just be exciting to get to share the sport with a wider audience because of people like Kara coming into it.
Yeah, and I think she has an appreciation for how different it is from road marathoning. I mean, if she had a bad road marathon, it was like 2.5 hours that she was out there. So it's like here, if she has a great day, it's going to be like somewhere around 4, maybe a little bit less. And to your point, like from the fueling standpoint, that's a different ball game. And then you've got, a course that has way more variety to it than any marathon that you will ever run on the roads. And that certainly affects your energy expenditure during the race. And that just, a lot of that just comes from experience. So it'll be interesting to see what she learned from that marathon at Leadville. I mean, this is definitely apples to oranges in terms of like the type of course that it is, but I'm sure she learned some things that she's going to apply here, and she's going to learn more here that hopefully she'll apply to the next one. So
yeah, breathing will be a lot easier this time around. So what are we doing on race day? I know you have a couple of athletes out there.
Yeah, so I've got a guy running the marathon. I've got Amy and Justin in the 50K, and I've got EO in the 50 mile. I will not go to the start of any of those races. I think the easiest thing for me to do is to go to Tennessee Valley and see them all kind of come through there the first time, and then depending on where they're at on the course, I'll probably go to Cardiac. That's another easy access point. It's pretty quick to get there from Tennessee Valley if you know what you're doing and you don't hit any kind of traffic. And the 50 mile, EO will come through there twice. Justin and Amy will go through there once. Jared, who's my guy doing the marathon, he'll go through there as well. But they stagger the start time, so that makes it complicated.
By 2 hours, right?
Yeah, it's like 5, 7, and 9 a.m. for those 3 races. So it makes it challenging from that standpoint. But I'll be out and about on the course throughout the day. I'm not crewing for anybody, but just trying to find places where I can be useful as a coach.
It's like decently spectator friendly, and there's plenty of great views. What about you?
So I've got a couple athletes running the 50 mile, which will be really exciting. And then I've got so many friends and teammates racing. So it's really great.
Yeah, that's the other side of it. I have a ton of friends racing too that I want to support.
That's what especially if you're a local, like you're going to have, granted, you only see them like 3 or 4 times, but
people are going to come out for it too. Yeah. Because this community.
Cardiac will be like a hangout. It's going to be, so like we're going to get up and we probably won't go to Tennessee Valley. We'll probably go straight out to Cardiac, I think. Like TBD on that, and just like hang out there. And then we volunteered to do I Run Far coverage, and so we are going to go back to actually the bridge. We're going to be where they come down SCA to the parking lot on the north end of the bridge. We're going to be camped out there doing I Run Far coverage for the top 10 men and women.
It's about 2 miles to go, 2-ish, 2.5.
2-ish, depending on like your tangents, maybe cutting across Crissy Field. But then we'll probably run backwards on the course if we can. Like it's a little bit narrow in there. We'll maybe jump some trail, take some road around to go find our friends who are, doing like their first 50K to go be able to cheer them on out there as well.
I'm going to put you guys on the spot. Give me a name.
A name? Like a name of anyone?
Winner.
Oh, okay.
For both.
I was like, random name? We can do random
Bobby. Men's field, women's field. Give me a name.
I'll start with the men's field since that's what we
One name.
Kicked off the show with. Matt Daniels.
Can I pick the same person?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Matt Daniels. I want him to have a really great day.
Okay. Women's side?
I'm going to punt to Corinne.
Okay.
It's tough, right?
I want Io to win. I did tell her last night at our like little speaker series talk that I wouldn't care if she didn't win because I don't want like results and self-worth to get, confused. I was like, but like I want her. She's like my hometown hero. I was her, big, her rooting silently for her at Western States while we were both running the same race. Like Io is I want to see her come across that bridge in first.
I think with anime, it feels kind of boom or bust. Like I could easily see her winning just as easily as I can see her dropping out at Tennessee Valley 2 or something. I'm going to go with Io too. I think she has the home knowledge, the home course knowledge. I think she'll be, I don't know how motivated she is by external factors, but just having your people around and knowing that, they're rooting for you, I think that'll play into the race. And, it's just Io. It's Io Wang. So I would pick her.
She's a competitor and
Yeah.
she's got her eyes on this.
And I'll just go with Jared because I think just to be different and a contrary, but I can easily see Jared or Matt coming out of that field. I don't really see anybody else. I'm hoping for great things for Dylan, obviously, because he's Dylan Bowman. Everybody loves Dylan, but I do think the winner will emerge from those two names. You haven't given us a winner.
Well, I mean, everyone watching this knows the answer to my question. Of course, I'm going to say Io Wang, and
Okay.
Sure, you can call my bias on that because I coach her. But if I'm being an objective observer of the sport,
you've got your analyst hat on,
yeah,
man.
But if I'm being an objective observer of the sport, I mean, I do think for all the factors that you guys just described, it's a race that suits all of her strengths.
Yep.
And it's in her backyard, and she's excited to be here. And it's gonna be a great race. But if I got to put, my lunch money on someone, I'm putting it on Io.
And I think maybe, I don't know about Brittany's history, her entire race history, but every single of our top 4 that we've kind of talked through a bunch today, Anime, Io, Brittany, and Claire, at least 3 of those 4 have a DNF. And not to say that that matters or not. I have plenty of DNFs at this point over the last couple of years, but I think that just shows the chance factor of all this. I think you've got to come into this race 100%. I think you've got to mentally be ready for it, and then you've got to kind of see what the day gives you. And so, a DNF for any of those women is not out of the question.
Yeah,
and
it's a 50-mile race. It's a very hard course. Anything can happen. I'm excited to watch it. I think on
really
both
excited.
sides, we're going to see some great racing. And to people who aren't intimately involved with the sport, the thought of ultras being competitive is still this kind of weird thing. But I mean, I think we're going to see 2 close races on both sides, and that's exciting as a fan. And I hope that brings in some new fans.
There are some wheels out there, folks. There are some hot wheels out there on the course.
How long
Anyway,
have you been saving that one?
I don't know. I just made it up on the fly, man.
You didn't prep that one earlier?
Not at all. I hope you guys enjoy the race. Be sure to tune into I Run Far. I'm sure they will be the best source, the most reputable source for all the breakdown. On behalf of Mario Fraley and Corinne Malcolm, hope you guys enjoy the race. Lord knows we will. This has been another episode of the Weekly Rundown. As I mentioned, a Patreon exclusive normally, but every now and again
Coming
we
at
like
you
to
for free
bring the big
this
guns.
week.
and
Whenever
bring it
I
out to the
come on,
masses.
apparently I ruin that.
Enjoy the race, you guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.